He ruled an empire built on shadows and blood. She vanished without a trace, taking with her the only thing that could make him human again. 4 years later, he found her in a quiet neighborhood, exhausted, beautiful, and surrounded by 3 pairs of eyes that looked exactly like his. She had hidden them from his world, protected them from his name, raised them alone while he became a monster. But now, standing in the doorway of her small apartment, staring at the children he never knew existed, he realized something terrifying. Love doesn't ask for permission, and neither does he. This is the story of a man who would burn his empire to the ground for a family he was never supposed to have. Welcome back to another Afro-Korean love story that will stay with you long after it ends. We're so close to reaching 1,000 subscribers. Help us get there by hitting that subscribe button. Now let's begin this journey together, and thank you for being part of this growing family. He had stopped believing in ghosts 4 years ago. The day she disappeared, Kwon Ji-hoon buried every soft part of himself alongside her memory. He became what his father always wanted: cold, calculating, untouchable. The heir who didn't flinch when men begged. The son who wore violence like a second skin. But ghosts don't care what you believe. It was a Tuesday afternoon when his world tilted. Ji-hoon had been tracking a debt, a small-time merchant who owed the wrong people money. The kind of errand he usually delegated, but lately, the walls of his penthouse felt too close, the silence too loud. So he drove himself through the boroughs of Queens, past storefronts with faded awnings and streets that smelled like rain and yesterday's dreams. That's when he saw her. She was carrying grocery bags, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing jeans that had seen better days and a jacket 2 sizes too big. For a moment, his brain refused to process it. Amara. His Amara. The woman who had vanished like smoke, leaving nothing behind but questions that turned into scars. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. 4 years. 4 years of searching, of hiring investigators who came back empty-handed, of waking up in the middle of the night convinced he'd imagined her entirely. And here she was, alive, real, crossing the street like she hadn't destroyed him. Ji-hoon parked 3 blocks down, his heart doing something it hadn't done in years, racing. He followed on foot, keeping his distance, watching as she turned into a narrow street lined with modest apartment buildings. She climbed the steps of a brick walk-up, fumbling with her keys, and that's when he heard them. Laughter. High-pitched, joyful, unmistakably young. The door swung open and 3 children spilled out onto the landing. Boys. Identical. Maybe 3 years old, with round faces and dark hair that fell across their foreheads in a way that made Ji-hoon's breath catch. Because he knew that hair. He saw it every morning in the mirror. "Mommy!" they chorused, tiny hands reaching for her legs, her bags, her attention. Amara knelt down, her face transforming into something so tender it hurt to witness. She kissed their foreheads one by one, murmuring words he couldn't hear but could feel in his chest. Soft, loving, exhausted. Ji-hoon stood frozen on the sidewalk, 20 feet away and a lifetime distant. 3 boys, 3 years old. 3 faces that were impossible to deny. The math was brutal and immediate. She had been pregnant when she left, carrying his children while she ran from him, from his name, from everything he represented. She had given birth alone, raised them alone, and he had spent 4 years becoming exactly the kind of man she'd been right to fear. One of the boys looked up suddenly, his gaze sharp and curious. For a heartbeat, father and son stared at each other across the distance. The child's eyes were dark, intelligent, unsettlingly familiar. Then Amara scooped him up, ushering all 3 inside, and the door closed with a finality that felt like a verdict. Ji-hoon stood there until the streetlights flickered on, until the temperature dropped and his breath became visible in the autumn air, until the only thing left was the truth, cold and undeniable. He was a father, and she had made sure he would never know. His phone buzzed. Yoon-suk, his second in command. "Boss, The meeting with the Italians is in an hour. Jihoon's voice came out steady despite the earthquake inside him. Cancel it. Sir? I said cancel it. Cancel everything for the next week. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully. Is everything all right? No. Nothing would ever be all right again. I'll call you back, Jihoon said and hung up. He looked up at the building. 4th floor, 2nd window from the left, where a light had just turned on. He could see movement behind the curtains. Her shadow. Their shadows. 4 years ago, Amara had chosen to disappear rather than stay with him. She had looked at the man he was becoming and decided their children deserved better. And maybe she'd been right. Maybe the Kwon Jihoon of 4 years ago would have turned those boys into weapons, heirs to an empire built on broken bones and buried secrets. But standing here now, watching the only woman he'd ever loved, read bedtime stories to children who had his face, his blood, his impossible second chance, Jihoon made a decision that would change everything. He wasn't going to let her run again. But he also wasn't going to be the monster she'd fled from. Even if it meant burning down everything his father built. Even if it meant destroying the only version of himself he knew how to be. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Yoon-suk, I need a full background check on an address in Queens, and I need it quietly. Who are we looking into? Jihoon's jaw tightened. The future. Amara couldn't sleep. She stood at her kitchen window, watching the street below, her hands wrapped around a mug of cold tea. Something felt wrong. That prickling awareness she'd developed over 4 years of looking over her shoulder, of jumping at shadows, of teaching her babies to be quiet when strangers came too close. She'd felt eyes on her today, in the grocery store, on the walk home, standing at her door. Mommy's being paranoid, she whispered to the empty room. But her hands were shaking. In the bedroom, her sons slept in a tangle of small limbs and dinosaur sheets. Minho, her bold one, had his arm thrown protectively over Junho's chest. Daeho, her quiet observer, curled at the edge, always watching even in sleep. They were everything. Her reason for running. Her reason for surviving 3 jobs and 60-hour weeks and an apartment that leaked when it rained. They were also undeniably Jihoon's. She saw him in every stubborn tilt of their chins, every intelligent flash in their eyes, every moment they went silent and calculating instead of crying. Kwon genetics were apparently stronger than her prayers. Amara closed her eyes against the memory of him. The way he'd looked at her the last time, like she was the only clean thing in his dirty world. The way his hands had been gentle even when the rest of him was learning cruelty. She'd loved him desperately, destructively, right up until the moment she realized love wouldn't save him from what he was becoming. So she'd run. Found out she was pregnant 2 weeks later, and decided her children would never know the weight of the Kwon name. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, her neighbor. Saw a man watching your building today. Fancy car. Didn't belong here. Amara's blood went cold. No, not yet. Not now. She'd been so careful. She grabbed her phone with trembling fingers and pulled up the burner app she'd installed years ago, the one connected to every security camera on her block, a paranoid investment that had taken 2 months of saved tips. Her building's entrance. Nothing. The side alley. Empty. The parking lot across the street. Her heart stopped. A black sedan. Windows tinted. Exactly the kind of car that followed Jihoon like a shadow in the old days. It had been there for 3 hours, according to the timestamp. Amara's mind raced. Options. She'd planned for this. She had go bags hidden in 3 locations. Cash sewn into the lining of her winter coat. A friend in Detroit who'd take them in, no questions asked. But running meant leaving the only stability her sons had ever known. Their preschool. Their routine. The small life she'd bled to build. A knock at the door shattered the silence. Amara froze. It was 11 p.m. Nobody knocked at 11 p.m. unless... Amara. His voice. Quiet, controlled, devastating. I know you're awake. I can see your shadow. Her legs almost gave out. 4 years. 4 years, and his voice still unmade her. Go away, Jehoon. Her own voice sounded strange, distant. I saw them. 3 words, the end of everything. I don't know what you're talking about. The lie tasted like ash. I saw my sons, Amara. Our sons. Don't insult us both by pretending. She pressed her forehead against the door. This close, she could almost feel him on the other side, could almost remember what it felt like when proximity didn't mean danger. You were never supposed to find us, she whispered. I know. A pause. I understand why you ran. The man I was becoming. You were right to take them away from that. Amara's throat tightened. This wasn't the Jehoon she'd expected, the one who would kick down doors and take what he believed belonged to him. Then leave us alone, she managed. Let us have this life. They're happy. They're safe. They don't need... A father? His voice cracked, just barely. You're right. They don't need the crime lord, the heir, the monster. Silence. But maybe they need the man who would give up his empire to know their names. She couldn't breathe. Jehoon? I'm not here to take them from you. Steady, certain. I'm here to ask if there's any version of the future where you let me try to be what they deserve. What you deserved 4 years ago before I lost myself. Amara closed her eyes. Behind her, in the bedroom, one of the boys whimpered in his sleep. Minho, probably. He had nightmares sometimes. Inherited anxiety she suspected came from carrying her fear in the womb. You can't just appear and expect... I expect nothing. His palm pressed flat against the door. She could feel it somehow. The heat of him. But I'm asking for everything. A chance. Supervised. Slow. Whatever terms you need. Your family will never allow it. My family doesn't make my choices anymore. Your empire means nothing if I can't look at my own children without them fearing who I am. Amara's hand hovered over the deadbolt. This was insane, reckless. Everything she'd run from. But he'd said our sons like a prayer. Like a man standing in the ruins of his kingdom, finally understanding what actually mattered. One chance, she heard herself say. You scare them, you pressure them, you bring your world anywhere near them. We disappear. And this time, you'll never find us. Understood. Tomorrow. 3 p.m. The park on Riverside. You come alone. I will. She unlocked the door but kept the chain on, opening it just enough to see him. 4 years had changed him. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. A hardness to his jaw. But when he looked at her, really looked at her, she saw the boy who'd promised her forever before he understood what forever cost. They have your eyes, she said quietly. His expression shattered and reformed. Do they have your strength? More than I ever had. Jehoon nodded slowly. Then they'll survive having me as a father. Maybe, Amara said. But the question is, will you survive becoming one? She closed the door before he could answer. Before she could let him see that she was crying. Jehoon didn't sleep. He sat in his car until dawn, staring at the window where his children slept, and made a list of everything he would have to destroy to deserve them. First, his father's expectations. Quan Tae Jin had built an empire on the principle that family was power, and power was survival. Sentiment was weakness. Love was leverage. Sons were investments. Jehoon pulled out his phone and typed a message he'd been composing in his head for 4 years. I'm out. Effective immediately. Find another heir. His finger hovered over send. This would start a war. His father didn't accept resignation. The families they'd made deals with, the enemies they'd kept at bay through reputation alone, all of it would destabilize the moment Jehoon walked away. He pressed send anyway. The response came within 90 seconds. A call. Jehoon answered. Have you lost your mind? His father's voice, cold as February in Seoul. I found it, actually. Whatever this rebellion is, I have sons. The words felt too big for his mouth. 3 of them. And they've been growing up without my name, without my protection, without knowing I exist because their mother was terrified of what I'd become. Silence. Then, bring them in. Legitimize them. They're Quan blood. No. Jihoon's voice cut like a blade. They're going to grow up normal, safe, away from this life. You don't walk away from this family. Watch me. He hung up, turned off his phone. Watched the sunrise paint Amara's building gold and pink, and wondered if his sons were awake yet. If they liked pancakes. If they knew how to tie their shoes. If they ever asked about their father. At 2:45 p.m., Jihoon stood at the entrance to Riverside Park, wearing jeans and a jacket instead of the tailored suits that had become his armor. He'd left his gun in the car. Left Yoonsuk 3 blocks away despite his protests. Left every piece of Kwon Jihoon the crime lord behind. He was just a man. Terrified and hopeful and completely out of his depth. They arrived at 3:02. Amara spotted him immediately, her body tensing, ready to run. But the boys didn't notice him yet. They were busy chasing pigeons, their laughter bright and uncomplicated. Jihoon's chest physically ached. Amara walked over slowly, her eyes scanning for threats, for bodyguards, for any sign he'd lied. You came alone. I said I would. Your phone is off. He pulled it out, showed her the black screen. Off. No tracker, no backup. Just me. She studied him for a long moment. They don't know who you are. I told them we're meeting a friend of mine. That's fine. Jihoon. Her voice softened, broke a little. They're going to ask questions. They're smart. Too smart. They get that from you. They get everything difficult from you. But there was almost a smile there. Almost. One of the boys, Minho he would learn later, ran over, breathless and bright-eyed. Mommy, the pigeons are so fast. We can't catch them. Jihoon's heart stopped. This close, the resemblance was undeniable. This was his face, miniaturized and full of joy he'd forgotten existed. Maybe they don't want to be caught, Amara said gently, crouching down. Like some things are meant to be free. Minho considered this seriously. Then he noticed Jihoon. Who's that? Amara's hand trembled slightly as she touched her son's shoulder. This is Jihoon. He's someone who wants to meet you and your brothers. Why? Suspicious. Already calculating. Definitely his son. Jihoon knelt down, making himself smaller, less threatening. Because your mom is important to me. And people who are important to her are important to me too. Minho tilted his head. Do you like dinosaurs? The question was so unexpected, so perfectly 3 years old, that Jihoon almost laughed. I don't know much about them. But I'd like to learn. I can teach you. Minho's face lit up. I know everything about T-Rex. I'd like that very much. The other 2 boys approached cautiously. Junho hid partially behind Amara's leg. Daeho just stared, quiet and assessing. That's Junho and Daeho, Amara said softly. They're more shy. Jihoon looked at each of them, memorizing their faces, the way they moved, the constellation of tiny details that made them real. It's nice to meet you. All of you. You talk funny, Junho whispered. I'm from Korea originally, Jihoon explained. Sometimes my accent comes through. Mommy says we're part Korean too, Minho announced proudly. But we've never been there. Jihoon glanced at Amara. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read, fear and hope tangled together, waiting to see if he would shatter this fragile moment. Maybe someday we could go together, Jihoon said carefully. If your mom says it's okay? Can we, Mommy? All 3 chorused. Amara's eyes glistened. Maybe. Someday. They spent an hour in the park. Jihoon learned that Minho never stopped talking, that Junho had a gap-toothed smile that could power cities, that Daeho communicated more through looks than words, but saw everything. He learned they loved chicken nuggets and hated naps, and had memorized every episode of their favorite cartoon. He learned that being a father wasn't about legacy or empires or continuing bloodlines. It was about sitting in the grass while a 3-year-old explained why pterodactyls were technically not dinosaurs, and feeling like your entire life had been building toward this single, perfect, ordinary moment. When it was time to leave, Minho hugged him spontaneously, just wrapped his small arms around Jihoon's leg and held on. Jihoon looked at Amara over their son's head, and she was crying silently. "Can we see you again?" Minho asked. Jihoon's voice barely worked. "If your mom says yes." 3 pairs of identical eyes turned to Amara, waiting, hoping. She wiped her face and nodded. "We'll see." It was the best thing anyone had ever said to him. As they walked away, Daeho looked back once, studying Jihoon with that too-old expression. Then he took his mother's hand and whispered something Jihoon couldn't hear. Later, Amara would tell him what he'd said. "That man has sad eyes like yours, Mommy." Jihoon stood in the park until they disappeared. Then he turned his phone back on. 73 missed calls. 17 messages, each more threatening than the last. His old life, demanding he come back, refusing to let him go. He deleted them all and typed one message to Yoonsuk. "I need you to liquidate my assets, all of them, and then I need you to help me become someone my sons won't be afraid of." The response came quickly. "Already started, boss. Or should I call you something else now?" Jihoon smiled, small and fragile. "Try father. I'm still learning what it means." The war came quietly at first. Jihoon had been naive to think his father would let him walk away cleanly. Kwon Tae-jin didn't operate on sentimentality or second chances. He operated on control, and his son's defection was a crack in the foundation of everything he'd built. It started with surveillance, black cars that appeared on Amara's street, always different models, always watching. Then came the questions, neighbors asking about the well-dressed man who'd been visiting, Mrs. Chen mentioning that someone had offered her money for information about the single mother on the 4th floor. Amara noticed immediately. 4 years of running had made her fluent in the language of danger. "They're closing in," she said when Jihoon arrived for his 4th visit. She wouldn't let him pass the building's entrance anymore, conducting their conversations in whispers while the boys played upstairs with a babysitter. "Your family?" "Yes. No point in lying. My father wants to meet them. Bring them into the fold." Her face went pale. "Absolutely not. I know. I'm handling it." "Handling it how, Jihoon?" Her voice rose, sharp with panic. "You can't negotiate with men like that. I know. I watched you become one of them." The words hit like a physical blow, but he took it because she was right. He had been exactly that kind of man. The kind who took what he wanted and called it legacy. "I'm liquidating everything," he said quietly. "The businesses, the properties, my stake in the family operations. I'm leaving nothing he can use as leverage. That won't stop him. No." Jihoon met her eyes. "But it'll buy us time. And I'm using that time to make sure you and the boys have protection, real protection. Not my father's kind. The legal kind, documentation, new identities if necessary, a way out that doesn't involve running blind." Amara wrapped her arms around herself. "I can't keep living like this. Looking over my shoulder, teaching them to be afraid." "I know." He wanted to touch her, to pull her close the way he used to when the world got too heavy. But that right had died the day she left. "Give me 2 weeks. I have people working on something. If it works, my father won't be able to touch any of you without destroying himself in the process." "And if it doesn't work?" Jihoon's jaw tightened. "Then I'll do what I should have done 4 years ago. I'll make a choice between my family's empire and my actual family." "You already made that choice when you walked away." "No," he said softly. "I made it when I saw Minho smile. Everything after that has just been logistics." Upstairs, through the window, they could hear the boys laughing. That sound, pure, uncomplicated, untouched by the shadows that followed their father, was the only thing keeping Jihoon tethered to something resembling hope. They ask about you, Amara admitted quietly. Minho wants to know when you're coming back. Daeho draws pictures of you. Junho. Her voice caught. Junho told his teacher he has a dad now. I didn't correct him. Jihoon closed his eyes against the weight of it. What did you tell them about me? The truth. That you're trying very hard to be the person they deserve. And if I fail? Amara looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw everything she wasn't saying. The woman who'd loved him enough to run, who'd raised his children in poverty rather than let them inherit his sins, who was still, despite everything, giving him a chance to prove he'd changed. Then we'll deal with it together, she said. But Jihoon, if your father comes near my sons, if he so much as speaks their names, I will disappear so completely you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if we ever existed. Understood. She turned to go, then paused. They're having a preschool performance next Friday. Dinosaur play. Minho has a speaking part. A hesitation. You could come, if you wanted. His heart did something complicated. I'll be there. Back row. No bodyguards. No. I know the rules, Amara. Gentle. Back row. Alone. Just a father watching his son pretend to be a T-Rex. The smallest smile touched her lips. He's very committed to the role. He's been practicing his roar for weeks. I wouldn't miss it. She nodded and disappeared into the building, leaving Jihoon alone on the street with the weight of 2 weeks and everything that could go wrong. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Yoonsuk, the contingency plan we discussed. Accelerate it. I need it operational in 10 days. That's ambitious. It's necessary. And I need you to do something else. Find out everything about the Riverside Preschool security. Cameras, staff background checks, entry points, everything. A pause. You think your father would... I think desperate men do desperate things. And my father is realizing he's losing control of his heir and his legacy in one move. Jihoon. Yoonsuk's voice softened, rare for him. You know if this goes sideways, if you're really asking me to help you burn down everything we built. I know what I'm asking. Then I'm in, all the way. Those kids deserve better than what we came from. Jihoon felt something in his chest loosen. Loyalty built on blood and fear was worthless. But loyalty chosen freely, with full knowledge of the cost? That was worth dying for. Thank you, brother. Don't thank me yet. Your father just put out word that he's calling a family meeting. All the heads. He's going to make an example of your defection. Let him. I stopped being afraid of him the moment I became a father myself. He hung up and looked back at the building. 4th floor, 2nd window, where a light burned warm against the encroaching dark. Where 3 boys who carried his face and his blood were learning what it meant to be loved without conditions. Where a woman who'd had every reason to hate him was somehow, impossibly, giving him a chance at redemption. Jihoon had spent his whole life believing power meant control. That strength meant never bending. That family meant duty and legacy and sacrifice. But standing here, watching his children's window, he finally understood what his father never would. Real power wasn't making people fear you. It was having something worth losing. Someone worth changing for. And he would burn every bridge, betray every oath, destroy every piece of Quan Tai Jin's empire if that's what it took to keep that light in the window burning. 2 weeks. He had 2 weeks to become someone his sons could be proud of. The countdown had already begun. The preschool performance was chaos in the best way. Parents with cameras, children in cardboard costumes, the overwhelming smell of craft glue and excitement. Jihoon sat in the back row as promised, wearing a baseball cap and fighting the urge to scan every exit like he was planning an extraction. Old habits died hard. Or didn't die at all. The lights dimmed. The makeshift curtain opened. And there was Minho, wearing a green construction paper dinosaur head that was slightly too big, standing center stage with the confidence of someone born to perform. Jihoon's throat tightened. I am T-Rex, Minho roared, his small voice carrying through the gymnasium. "King of the dinosaurs, fear my tiny arms." Laughter rippled through the audience. Jihoon found himself smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in recent memory. This was his son. Fearless, ridiculous, perfect. He caught Amara's eye 3 rows up. She was recording on her phone, but she glanced back at him, and something passed between them. A shared moment of impossible pride. Of look what we made. Look what survived despite everything we broke. The play continued. Junho played a gentle brachiosaurus who made friends with everyone. Daiho was a silent ankylosaurus, protective and watchful even in character. It was painfully, perfectly them. When it ended, children swarmed their parents. Minho spotted Jihoon immediately and dragged his brothers over, still wearing his dinosaur head. "Did you see me roar? Did you? I was so loud. You were incredible," Jihoon said, kneeling down. Absolutely terrifying. "Junho cried during rehearsal," Minho whispered conspiratorially. "Did not," Junho protested. "Did too. But it's okay because Daiho held your hand." Daiho just nodded, solemn and steady as always. Jihoon looked at the 3 of them, his sons, his second chance, his reason for everything, and felt something crack open in his chest. "I'm proud of all of you. You worked so hard." "Are you coming to dinner?" Minho asked hopefully. "Mommy's making spaghetti." Jihoon glanced at Amara, who had approached quietly. "Is that allowed?" She hesitated, then nodded. "You've earned it." But Jihoon, "I know, no business, no phones, just dinner." "Just dinner," she agreed. The walk to her apartment felt surreal. Jihoon carrying grocery bags while 3 small boys chattered about dinosaurs and what kind of powers each species would have if they were superheroes. Amara beside him, close enough that their hands almost touched, far enough that the distance felt intentional. This was normal. This was what people did. Families. The apartment was small but warm, filled with children's drawings and mismatched furniture and the kind of lived-in chaos that money couldn't buy. Jihoon had spent his life in spaces designed to intimidate, marble and sharp angles and rooms big enough to echo. This was different. This was home. Dinner was loud. Minho talked nonstop. Junho spilled his juice twice. Daiho watched Jihoon carefully, still deciding if he was trustworthy. And Amara. She laughed at something Minho said. Really laughed. And Jihoon remembered why he'd fallen in love with her in the first place. She saw light where he only saw shadows. She chose hope when he would have chosen control. After the boys went to bed, Jihoon helped clean up. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from once knowing someone completely. "They love you already," Amara said finally, drying dishes. "It scares me how easily they let you in. Should I pull back?" "No." She set down the towel. "That's not what scares me. What scares me is, what happens when your father makes his move? When he decides those boys are Quan property and comes to collect?" Jihoon leaned against the counter. "He can't, not legally. They don't have my name. No documentation ties them to the family." "You think that matters to him?" "No. Honest. But it matters to the federal prosecutor who's been building a RICO case against him for 3 years. The one I've been feeding information to." Amara's eyes widened. "You're testifying in exchange for complete immunity and witness protection for you and the boys, if you want it." The silence stretched, heavy with implications. "You'd betray your own father?" "He stopped being my father the day he told me sons were assets, not children." Jihoon's voice was steady. "I'm choosing my actual family, the one I want to deserve. Jihoon, he'll try to kill you. Let him try." He met her gaze. "I spent 4 years becoming exactly what he wanted, cold, ruthless, empty. And then I saw you with our sons, and I realized I'd rather die trying to be someone they could love than live as someone they'd fear." Amara pressed her hands to her face. "This is insane." I know. You're asking me to trust you, after everything. I am. What if you're lying? What if this is some elaborate— Jehoon pulled a folder from his jacket, the one he'd been carrying all night, waiting for this moment. These are the protection documents, new identities, bank accounts I can't access, a house in Portland under your name. Everything you need to disappear if I'm lying, if I fail, or if I die. She took the folder with shaking hands, flipping through pages of legal documents, bank statements, property deeds. You gave me everything, she whispered. No, I gave you the tools to leave, again, if you need to. He stepped closer. But I'm asking, begging for you to stay, to let me prove I'm more than my father's son, that I can be theirs. Amara looked up at him, eyes bright with tears. They already think you are. And you? The question hung between them, weighted with 4 years of absence and pain, and all the versions of themselves they'd killed to survive. I think, she said slowly, that you're the first person who ever chose me over power. And I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything. Jehoon's voice was rough. Just, don't run. Not yet. Give me time to finish this, to make sure you're all safe. Then if you want to leave, if you want to take them far away from anything connected to my name, I'll help you go. You'd let us leave? I'd hate it. Raw? Honest. But I'd let you. Because their safety matters more than my redemption. Amara set the folder down and did something that stopped his heart. She reached out and touched his face, her palm warm against his cheek. You're not the same man I left. No, I'm not. Good. Her thumb traced his jaw. Because I couldn't love that man anymore. But this one? The one who sits in the back row and learns about dinosaurs and gives up empires? Her voice broke. This one scares me. Because I could fall for him all over again. Jehoon covered her hand with his. Would that be so terrible? Yes. Because if your father destroys you, he'll destroy me too. And our sons need at least one parent who survives. Then we'll both survive. He pressed his forehead to hers. Together. Like we should have from the beginning. For one moment, they stood there. Two people who'd chosen each other once, lost each other, and were slowly, painfully finding their way back. Then Jehoon's phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Emergency pattern. He pulled away, checking the screen, and his expression went dark. What is it? My father just moved up the family meeting. Tomorrow. He knows about the prosecutor. Someone talked. Amara went pale. What does that mean? Jehoon was already moving, making calls, shifting into the mode that had kept him alive in a world built on violence. It means we're out of time. The family meeting was held in the place where all Quan decisions were made. A private room in a restaurant his grandfather had bought 40 years ago, back when the empire was still small enough to feel like family instead of industry. Jehoon arrived alone. No bodyguards, no Yunsok. Just him and the choice he'd already made. His father sat at the head of the table, flanked by uncles and cousins and all the men who'd built their lives on Quan power. They watched Jehoon enter with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed contempt. Sit, Quan Taijin commanded. Jehoon remained standing. I won't be long. You'll sit when your father tells you to sit. You stopped being my father when you told me my sons were bargaining chips. Calm, final. I'm here as a courtesy, to tell you in person what I've already set in motion. The temperature in the room dropped. You dare— I've given federal prosecutors everything. Jehoon's voice cut through the beginning of his father's rage. Names, dates, financial records, shipping routes, every illegal operation you've run for the past 15 years. In exchange, my sons and their mother receive full immunity and protection. They'll never be touched by this family's sins. Chaos erupted. Men shouting, chairs scraping. His father's face transforming into something ugly and ancient. You betray your own blood for a woman and some bastards? Don't. Jihoon's voice dropped to something deadly. Don't call them that. They're more legitimate than anything you've built, because they were made from love, not leverage. Love? His father laughed, harsh and bitter. You sound like your mother before she learned her place. My mother died afraid of you, died small and quiet and beaten down by a man who confused fear with respect. Jihoon stepped forward. I won't do that to Amara. I won't do that to my sons. So yes, I'm betraying you, gladly, completely. And when they lock you away, I'll sleep better than I have in years. His uncle spoke up, trying diplomacy. Jihoon, think about what you're throwing away. The empire, your inheritance, is built on bones and broken promises. You want it? Take it. Divide it among yourselves. I want no part of it. You think you can just walk away? His father stood, trembling with rage. You think I'll let you destroy everything I built? You don't have a choice. The prosecutors move in 72 hours. You can spend that time hunting me down, trying to get to my family, proving every violent thing I've testified to. Or you can use it to run, to liquidate, to save whatever pieces of this empire you can. I'll kill you myself. Maybe. Jihoon met his father's eyes without flinching. But you'll have to do it in front of federal agents, because from this moment on, I'm under protective custody, and any move you make against me or mine just adds years to your sentence. The silence was absolute. Why? His father's voice was almost broken, almost human. I gave you everything. No. Jihoon's voice softened just slightly. You gave me your version of everything. Power, fear, control. But you never gave me a choice. You never asked what I wanted. You just assumed I'd follow the path you cut, regardless of the cost. And what do you want? To be a father who doesn't teach his sons that love is weakness. To be a man who sleeps through the night without nightmares. To choose something other than empire for once in my life. He paused. I want what you never gave me. Freedom. His father sank back into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. You've destroyed us. No, I've freed us. You just can't see the difference yet. Jihoon turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it had to be this way. But I'm not sorry I'm doing it. He walked out of his father's restaurant, his father's empire, his father's life, and didn't look back. Outside, a black SUV waited. Federal agents. His new reality. But there was another car parked across the street. Amara's old sedan. And standing beside it, her. Waiting. Despite the danger, despite everything. Jihoon crossed to her and she met him halfway. It's done, he said. Are we safe? We will be. 72 hours and they'll have him in custody. After that. He touched her face, gentle and reverent. After that, we can be anything we want. Go anywhere. Start over. The boys want to know if you're coming to dinner tomorrow. Her voice was soft, hopeful. Every day, Jihoon said. If you'll let me. Every single day for the rest of my life. That's a long time. Not long enough. Amara studied him. This man who'd chosen her over legacy, who'd burned down his inheritance for a chance at redemption, who'd proven that people could change if they wanted it badly enough. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Come to dinner tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Her eyes glistened. Come be their father. For real this time. Not as Kwon Jihoon the heir, just as Jihoon. The man who learns about dinosaurs and sits in back rows and keeps his promises. I can do that. His voice was rough with emotion. I want to do that more than I've ever wanted anything. She kissed him then, soft, brief, full of possibility. Then come home, she said. Your sons are waiting. Home. Not an empire, not a legacy. Just a small apartment in Queens with 3 boys who argued about dinosaurs and a woman who'd given him a second chance he'd spend his whole life trying to deserve. Jihoon looked back once at the restaurant where his father still sat, surveying the ruins of his kingdom. Then he looked at Amara, at the future she was offering, and made his choice. He got in her car. He went home. And for the first time since he was a boy, before violence became his language and power became his prison, Kwon Ji-hoon allowed himself to believe in happy endings, not perfect ones, not easy ones, but real ones. Built on small moments and chosen promises and 3 pairs of identical eyes that looked at him like he was their whole world. Later that night, after dinner and bedtime stories and goodnight kisses that felt like miracles, Minho asked him a question. "Are you staying this time?" Jihoon knelt beside his bed, smoothing back hair that was so much like his own. "Yes, if you want me to. Forever? Forever. Promise? Promise." Minho smiled, gap-toothed and trusting, and closed his eyes. Jihoon stayed until all 3 boys were sleeping. Then he found Amara in the kitchen, staring out the window at the city lights. "No more running?" he asked quietly. "No more running," she confirmed. Then, softer, "We're really doing this. Building a life. A real one. We're really doing this." She turned to him, and in her eyes he saw everything they'd lost and everything they might still find. "Don't break their hearts, Jihoon. Don't let them down." "I won't." He pulled her close, held her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. "I swear on everything I am and everything I'll become, I won't." Outside, the city hummed. Inside, 3 boys dreamed dreams unburdened by their father's sins. And somewhere between the ruins of an empire and the beginning of a family, redemption felt less like salvation and more like simply showing up. Every day, choosing love over legacy, choosing them over everything else. Always.